Good evening, Lake Orion. Welcome to History Now here on ONTV. I'm your host, Anthony Taormina. This week I want to talk about something that occurred in November, the gales of November. The sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald that occurred in 1975, which led to the great song led by Gordon Lightfoot in 1976, The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, which was destroyed. The song talks about the gales of November. It was not a gale, ladies and gentlemen. These were storm force winds, which consist of winds that are greater than 40 to 50 miles an hour. Now, I want to talk to you about the history of the Edmund Fitzgerald before the sinking of the ship, that November 1975 day. The Edmund Fitzgerald was designed by Northwestern, was brought up by Northwestern Mutual Life Insurance, which was an insurance company based off of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It was the practice of Northwestern was to practice to purchase ships for operations by other companies. At the end, it was designed by GLEW, which was Great Lakes Engineering back in 1957. Northwestern, with the naming rights, named the ship after its president and chairman, who happened to be Edmund Fitzgerald. And the company itself was ran by, and the company that Northwestern purchased the ship for, that the contract was bought by, was a company called Ogilvy Norton Corporation. The ship itself launched on June 7th, 1958, albeit the ship was accidental prone. When the Edmund Fitzgerald started, there were several issues with it at the beginning. The boat actually crashed into a pier. It would also collide with other vessels throughout its journey. It actually lost its original bow in 1974 in the Detroit River. But off with the negatives and more with the positives. It often carried iron or taconite, which is another theme for iron. It often traveled from Duluth, Minnesota to Toledo, Ohio. In its process, passengers would travel. There were boat watchers that would watch the boat. It was one of the bigger boats to go within the St. Lawrence Riverway. Passengers would travel. Often the captain would go out of his way to care and feed and cook, or would provide dinner. It was somewhat considered a luxury ship. It was very much advanced. The bathrooms were very much wonderfully done. There were events to do on the boat. As I said, boat watchers would often watch the boat. There was daily music, which would attract boat watchers because the Edmund Fitzgerald often played music. It shattered several world records in travel because the Edmund Fitzgerald would consistently average 47 trips a season. By 1975, before it sank, there were 748 trips throughout the Great Lakes, which was the largest, which was the equivalent of 44 trips throughout the world. There were 748 trips in the Great Lakes. And if you look at a map of the Great Lakes, you got Lake Michigan, Lake Huron, Lake Superior, Lake Erie, Lake Ontario. That's a lot of real estate. And the Edmund Fitzgerald made 748 trips in the Great Lakes. Now, from Wisconsin, from the Upper Peninsula to Detroit, travel would take 5 days just to get to Detroit. Now, and at the same time, in 1969, despite the Edmund Fitzgerald being accident prone, in 1969, the Edmund Fitzgerald received a safety award for 8 years of operation without work-related injuries. The Edmund Fitzgerald crew did a very good job of taking care of its crew. So for 8 years of operation without non-work days, the Edmund Fitzgerald earned itself a safety award, despite being accident prone. Now, darker days would await the Edmund Fitzgerald. We come back to history now. We're going to talk about that awful voyage, that November day in 1975. Be right back.
You'd do anything to take care of that spot on your lawn. So why not take care of that spot on your skin? If you're a man over 50, you're in the group most likely to develop skin cancer, including melanoma, the cancer that kills 1 person every hour. Check your skin for suspicious or changing spots. Go to spotskincancer.org to find out what to look for. A message from the American Academy of Dermatology.
Welcome back to History Now here on ONTV. I'm your host, Anthony Taormina. I want to talk about the Edmund Fitzgerald and that final voyage, that November 1975 day, November 9th and the 10th of 1975, where the Edmund Fitzgerald sank. But prior to that, it's very important to understand and talk about Michigan storms that occur in October and November, because storms like this in Michigan are fairly common. Now, you would often have low pressure systems come in, and they would come in and enter Lake Michigan. They would enter Lake Superior. They'd enter Lake Huron, and a massive amount of wind would accompany these low pressure systems coming into Michigan. And that has not changed. In this case, in 1975, there was fears that the storms would come in and shipwreck the ships. Michigan was no stranger to Great Lake shipwrecks. If we talk about the Great Lakes storm of 1913, there was multiple shipwrecks then, and there was efforts by engineers to prevent further shipwrecks from happening. Now, as I said, in 1969, the Edmund Fitzgerald received a safety award, but it was also accident prone. But there was production of iron and taconite that needed to be shipped. It needed to be shipped from Wisconsin to Ohio. And as a result, a lot of these ships would have no choice but to sail, often through stormy seas, in order to get their production to please their customers, because they had a contract. They had an agreement to meet. So, in 1975, from November 2nd to November 10th, the Edmund Fitzgerald would sail from Wisconsin to Ohio. And there was supposed to be a very bad storm that day. So the National Weather Service issued a gale warning, to prepare for dangerous conditions in Lake Superior. So So they ended up and you can't sail from Lake Michigan all the way through the state. There's a land called Michigan. So you had to go from Lake Michigan, sail up north into Lake Superior, and then go east, and then go south, into Lake Huron to the eventual destination. So there was gale warnings. The National Weather Service issued gale warnings, but they later had to upgrade it to storm warnings, which are winds that are higher than 50 miles an hour. So one thing that boats tend to do is boats tend to ship closer or sail closer to shore in case they have to dock, in case they have to go to port, which most encourage you not to sail during a gale or during a storm or a gale force wind, especially if it's a storm. You don't sail during a storm. You're basically putting your life in your own risk if you're setting sail during a storm warning. But in this case it was gale, so it was take precautions. And the Edmund Fitzgerald was a bigger boat, and it wasn't the first time the Edmund Fitzgerald had experienced gale force winds. Well, in this case, they ended up getting into Boat Bay, and it experienced that east side of the low pressure where the Edmund Fitzgerald would meet up with the Anderson, and it met up with another boat from the Anderson that was traveling to Indiana, where it was experiencing gale force winds with winds up to 57 miles an hour, which is actually considered storm force winds. So another boat actually told the National Weather Service to upgrade the warning from gale to storm warning. So as a result, the Edmund Fitzgerald and the Anderson both experienced changing winds, which the wind was gusting at first from the northeast, then it gusted from the south, and then it gusted to the northwest, which they were right into that low pressure, so they experienced changing winds as that low pressure was passing. At the same time, there was a heavy, blinding snow that was taking place. That it was really snowing hard. There was rain that was falling as well. So it was very, very difficult to see. And in the water, there's also fog, which also makes travel very, very hazardous, especially on water, which is why many mariners encourage you to go into port and allow the storms to pass. The Edmund Fitzgerald had a deadline to meet, and as a result, it set sail during that storm. Now, naturally, to get closer to port, it would set sail close to shore in case it had to dock. But it kept going and going and going, and about 7:30, the waves at that point were up to 23 feet. And the Anderson lost contact with the Edmund Fitzgerald about 7:40, 7:50. At that point, going into 8 o'clock that night, it was at 25 feet. The Edmund Fitzgerald would break into two. The captain went down with the ship. 29 crew members passed away. There was later revealed that the crew members were wearing coveralls. They were also wearing life jackets, expecting that that they would fall and perish. When we come back, I'm going to talk about the several theories and the memorials of the Edmund Fitzgerald here on History Now on ONTV.
Set the date. Lake Orion is having its 16th annual Flower and Art Fair on Friday, May 6th and Saturday, May 7th. This event takes place in the streets of downtown Lake Orion and kicks off the summer season. It's a wonderful place to purchase garden-related products and handmade craft items. This also provides a great opportunity to buy that special Mother's Day gift. Want to be a vendor in the fair or know someone who does? Don't delay, apply today. Give us a call or check out our website for an application. For more information or to download a vendor application, visit our website at downtownlakeorion.org. We hope to see you there.
Welcome back to History Now here on ONTV. This is Anthony Taormina speaking to you guys. I want to talk about the Edmund Fitzgerald at this point was already sinking in the water, and 29 people lost their lives. There were several theories at why the Edmund Fitzgerald truly sank. There was a lot there, but you cannot deny that the water, the waves, and the structural failure of the Edmund Fitzgerald played a role in why the ship sank. There were several theories that people came up with in the conclusion of why it sank. There was the rogue waves, which my grandpa came up with a good quote of "Don't be afraid of it, but don't trust it," when it comes to the waters of the Great Lakes. There was possible theories that a rogue wave could have been the cause. There was also cargo hold flooding that took place in the boat. There was shuffling, where it got so close to shore that it couldn't maneuver. But also there was structural failure. The conclusions were the weather played a role, and also the structure of the ship played a role in its sinking. But it is also possible that the theories that I made mention to a few seconds ago could have occurred. And they most likely did occur, which was probably all four of them occurring at once, which caused the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald. Because you cannot deny the waves were awful. There was flooding in the cargo hold. There was flooding in the cargo, and it probably got so close to shore that it was not able to maneuver. And you could not deny there was structure failure because, as I said, the ship did break into two. But it sounded like the crew members were expecting to go in the water because many of them wore life jackets, were wearing coveralls, and hopefully we're expecting a rescue to take place. But because of the waves were so severe, because the weather was so deadly and dangerous out there, that it made rescue impossible. Now, as a result, as I said in the memorials, 29 lives were lost. The next day, at the Mariner Church bell in Detroit, it rang 29 times in tribute to the victims. Gordon Lightfoot, with his song "The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald" in 1976, memorialized those lives lost in the Edmund Fitzgerald. I would encourage people to read or to listen to the song. It's a really, really good song, and it memorializes the victims of the Edmund Fitzgerald. The anchor of the Fitzgerald was recovered. It's seen currently at the Great Lakes Museum. Also, the Fitzgerald bell on July 4th, 1995 was recovered, and that is currently on display in the Great Lakes Shipwreck Museum located in Detroit. The majority of those who passed away were from Ohio and also from Minnesota and Wisconsin. The memory of the Edmund Fitzgerald will never be forgotten because it is one of the more famous shipwrecks that occurred in American history. It was also publicized and covered with the introduction of television, of social media, or not social media, but television. And it's still a topic that is covered, especially when you go into Michigan history and you explore shipwrecks. The Edmund Fitzgerald sinking is one of the more recognizable shipwrecks in marine history. The Edmund Fitzgerald could easily have been one of the most, could have easily been still, could have been sailing today, could have easily still sailed today, or it would have had a happy retirement. Instead, it is in the water. Instead, it's in the water of Lake Superior. Will the Edmund Fitzgerald truly be recovered? Probably not. But there are several items from the Fitzgerald that can be taken, such as the bell, the anchor, and we continue to remember the Edmund Fitzgerald in Michigan history as one of the greatest ships to ever sail in Michigan and throughout the Great Lakes. Well, that'll do it for this week's episode of History Now. I'm your host, Anthony Taormina, heading on out. Lake Orion, I'll see you soon.